In this video, we're going to show you how to replace your front press-in wheel bearing on a Honda Pilot. This is located in the front of the vehicle, behind the wheel. Let's get started. Raise and support the vehicle, and now we can remove our lug nuts with a 22mm. It's good to have a magnet tray. You don't want to kick these around. We'll remove the caliper body with the 17mm bolts. If you have a magnet tray, it's good to set these in that so you don't kick them around. Now we want to hang and support this so we don't put any stress on the hoses. We're going to use a securing strap to hang up our caliper. Loop it through the end. Higher. I'm going to make sure that that's not going to fall. To remove our pads, we want to remove our springs. And if you have a magnet tray handy, you definitely want to put these in that. And remove our pads. And we'll set those off to the side. Now we can remove our caliper bracket with the two 19mm bolts. Before we can remove our rotor, we need to remove the rotor screw with a number 3 Phillips. We'll remove our axle nut with a 36mm. Now we need to free up the axle. I'm going to use a punch and a hammer. To remove our tie rod, first we need to remove the cotter pin. We're going to use a set of side cutters. We'll straighten out the ends of the cotter pin and then grab it from the back side. And pinch, and then use the leverage. And you'll want to replace this. Now we can remove the nut with a 17mm. To remove the tie rod from the knuckle, we're going to strike the end of the knuckle with a hammer right here. Just be cautious, you don't want to damage your threads. To remove the ball joint, we have to remove this cotter pin first. I'm going to pop up the outside portion of the cotter pin. and that can be reused. Now we'll remove the nut for the ball joint with a 19mm. Now we need to free up the ball joint from the knuckle. To do that, we're going to hit on the knuckle here. Now we're going to use a hook and a pry bar, and we can fully release the ball joint. Now we'll go up top and release the pinch bolt for the strut. We'll remove our pinch bolt with a 17mm. To remove our ABS sensor, we'll use a 10mm. We need to unplug the ABS sensor. In order to do that, we need to remove it from the strut and the chassis. We'll remove this clip by pinching in on the two tabs. This part just pulls off of the strut. To release this clip from the chassis, there's two tabs. Push the tabs to the inside. To remove this clip from the chassis, I'm going to lift up a little bit with my fingers to get my trim tool underneath it. Certainly use a flathead for this. Now we'll go up into the engine bay and undo the connector. Looking in on the passenger side of our engine bay, we're going to find this connector going into the chassis. We'll press in on the tab, and it can help to press in on the connector while doing this. Now you want to check the terminals for any corrosion. These look good. Now to remove the rest of the sensor, there's a tab on the top and the bottom. You push in on them one at a time or both. We're going to take the wiring harness for the ABS sensor. We'll just place it behind our backing plate so that that's able to come with our knuckle. We'll be using our hook and pry bar on the lower control arm. We're going to get the ball joint out of the knuckle and at the same time pull the knuckle off the strut. We're going to be coming in on the back side. There's a small slit in the back of the knuckle. I'm just going to use a long flathead screwdriver and open it up. If the knuckle is stuck on the strut, you may need to use a hammer and chisel. There we have it. Our ABS sensor was stuck in the knuckle, so we couldn't remove it before removing the knuckle from the car. We're going to have to push it out from the inside. To do that, I'm going to use a 3/8 extension and be very careful not to damage the sensor. We're over here at the press. We need to set up our knuckle in the flattest orientation we can get it, supporting it by at least 2 or 3 solid points on the bottom. You don't want to damage your backing plate. Now that we have this all set up, we can start pressing. With the center of our hub pressed out, we can carry on to pressing out the rest of the bearing. To remove the backing plate, we have 3 number 3 Phillips head screws. We have a snap ring here holding the bearing in. We're going to remove that using a set of snap ring pliers. This is an internal snap ring. With the C-clip out on the other side, you want to find something that's just big enough to fit in the space, but not too small that it's going to split the rest of the bearing in half. And there we have it. In order to get the bearing race off the hub, we're going to cut it. I'm going to cut diagonally so that we don't damage the hub itself. And then we can use a chisel and a hammer to get it off. Now we can take this back to the press and press it back into the bearing. When you install the new bearing, you want to make sure that your magnetic strip is facing towards the inside of the vehicle. In our case, that means installing it down. We'll line up the bearing, and then we'll just use the old bearing to press in the new one. As you're pressing the bearing in, you want to keep making sure that it's going in straight. If your bearing starts going in crooked, make sure you readjust. Once the top of the bearing that you're installing is past the lip and you can't see it anymore, you want to be careful. You don't want to put too much pressure on it and damage the bearing. When you stop seeing movement, stop pressing. Once we have the bearing pressed into the knuckle, we can install our C-clip. You want to make sure that the C-clip is fully seated. We can install our backing plate. You want to snug these down, but don't over tighten them. Now with the hub set up to go into the bearing, we can press this in, making sure it's going in nice and straight. Same as the bearing itself. Once the hub stops moving, you don't want to press too much more. Now we can take this back over to the car. Before we reinstall our knuckle, you want to clean up the housing where the strut's going to install. To make it a little easier to install our knuckle, I'm just going to remove the bracket holding the brake hose on with a 12mm. Now I'm just going to hang the caliper up a little higher. That'll keep that out of our way. You want to clean up the bottom of the strut. I'm just going to use some brake clean and a rag. And we'll apply some anti-seize to the knuckle where the strut will install. To install the knuckle, as you're placing the knuckle onto the strut, you want to get the axle in. Then we can pry down on the control arm and get the ball joint in. There's a small notch on the back of the strut. As you're going up, you want to line up that notch with the split in the back of the knuckle. Now we can install our axle and our ball joint. Now we can install our pinch bolt through the knuckle. Now we can install our axle. We'll get that started into the hub, and then we can start our ball joint in. Now we can use a pry bar on the lower control arm. We can install the nut on the ball joint. We'll get our other hardware started, and then we can come back and torque these. And we can install our tie rod. When you go to tighten down the nut, put downward pressure on the tie rod. We can start our axle nut on. And we'll snug that down. We'll torque our tie rod nut to 44 foot-pounds. We can't fit a torque wrench on our ball joint, so we're just going to tighten it up to the best of our abilities. We can reinstall our spring pin. Now we can install our cotter pin. Now we can turn each of the ears back and lock this in place. We'll torque the pinch bolt for the strut to 58 foot-pounds. When installing our rotor, we want to be sure that we line up where the rotor screw goes. You want to snug that up, but not too tight. Now we can install our caliper bracket. And we'll snug these down. Now we'll torque our bracket bolts to 101 foot-pounds. We can install our pads. As you bring down your caliper, you want to make sure that the hose isn't twisted. As we're installing the caliper body, we can install our spring clips. You want to make sure that the slide pins are straight, and they'll line up with the notch at the top and bottom. Now we can install our hardware. We'll snug those down. Don't forget to remove your securing strap, and we'll torque these to 53 foot-pounds. Now we can reinstall our brake hose bracket. And we'll tighten that up, being cautious not to over tighten it. I'm going to use a bore brush to clean out the ABS sensor hole. I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the ABS sensor, but not on the actual sensing portion itself. Just enough so it can be removed again. We can tighten this down to the best of our abilities. Now we can start putting the wire back in its place. Now we want to route the ABS wire back the way it came, making sure that it's not twisted. Want to make sure any grommets like these are fully seated. You can see 3 tabs on this part of the connector. The small tab goes towards the front. Now we can go up into the engine bay. And we can plug in our electrical connector. You want to make sure you audibly hear a click, and if you can't, make sure it's secured. To torque the axle nut, if you don't have someone to hold the brake pedal for you, you can use a pry bar. Use a pry bar in between the wheel studs to hold the axle still. We're going to torque this to 242 foot-pounds. Use a hammer and a chisel to peen the nut so it doesn't back off. If you thread the first nut all the way on, that'll hold the wheel for you. And now we can snug those down. Now we can torque these in a star pattern to 94 foot-pounds using a 22 millimeter.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.